This is your news for Tuesday, June 13th. Yesterday I was in Washington, D.C. Tonight I'm coming to you live from Ann Arbor, Michigan. Sorry, it took me a moment there. Lots to share with you about what's happening in the news today. So I'm going to get started. Good morning, everyone. I'm in a hotel lobby, so there's going to be background noise, and I'm using my iPhone to connect for internet. So I'm praying this is going to be stable enough. All right. So the first thing I really need to talk to you that's happening about that is completely outrageous. I actually have to take a breath so I don't freak out on this live stream. Okay. So I was being interviewed the other day by an NBC reporter who started asking me questions like, are you concerned that you've advocated for ending abortion and mortality of pregnant women is going to increase? Obviously, as pro-lifers and as women and someone who's had 4 babies, I care about maternal mortality. But this is a common tactic that we hear in the pro-life movement all the time. There's this thought that if there's not abortions, that women who have tragic pregnancies, that have risky pregnancies, aren't going to get the care that they need to survive, and some of them may die. Therefore, we should justify all abortions for whatever reason. All 1,000,000 of them a year, which doesn't add up. There's a lot of questions. In fact, you can look in Poland. Poland has one of the strictest abortion laws in all of Europe. It's certainly Eastern Europe, and they have the lowest mortality rate, maternal mortality rate. The same thing for Chile. Chile for years had virtually no abortions, had the lowest mortality rate of pregnant women. Same thing that Ireland had before they legalized abortion. They had virtually no abortions, had one of the lowest mortality rates for pregnant women. So this whole line of questioning doesn't stand up. What was interesting is the NBC reporter was actually asking about this study from the Commonwealth Wealth Fund. And the study talks about that in basically red states, or states that are going to be likely in a post-Roe America to restrict abortion, that they have worse outcomes for pregnant mothers. Now, what's interesting about this study right here is that this study is actually using data from 2018 to 2020. So as I was getting questioned yesterday in DC about this reporter about this Commonwealth study saying that women in red states and abortion restrictive states are going to face higher mortality rates when they're pregnant, I told her, look, I don't know what study you're referencing. I need to read the study or comment. I gave her some general feedback of, well, one, no one can actually ever talk about mortality of pregnant women in America with actual knowledge because we don't have a national abortion reporting law. The abortion lobby doesn't allow that to happen. They always nix that, okay? We actually don't have good stats. 2, I can't tell you how many future OBGYNs I have met in the 17 years since launching Students for Life who are not going to become OBGYNs. Why? Because they're Christian, pro-life young people in medical school, terrified they're going to spend all this time and money going to school, and then they're going to get sued for not committing abortions, or they're actually going to fail. And we know from medical schools across the country, some medical schools, you actually have to sign something before you actually can, will you be interviewed and considered for acceptance that you'll participate in abortion. We have, Javier Becerra, the abortion activist, who's posing as our HH secretary, Joe Biden. They have already said that they don't believe that Christians in the medical field should actually have conscience rights. So when you want to talk about the lack of OBGYNs, there is a lack of OBGYNs, and it's a problem that everybody should be concerned about. But maybe part of the problem is that we're scaring away a lot of young people who would be OBGYNs because there's no conscience rights. But even if, I'm going to say all that, but even that, thinking about this interviewer was interviewing me yesterday, trying to have this gotcha question, this study doesn't actually say anything about post-Roe America. This study was conducted, and these numbers are before Roe was actually reversed. Doesn't make sense at all, okay? So just when you hear that, there actually isn't a study saying that mortality of pregnant women has gone up in Republican states since Roe versus Wade's reversed. Just keep that fact ready, because I'm sure you're going to hear it. Wait and see how this interview is actually aired, okay? But then the most enraging thing, so that was already, I already knew that was happening, it was kind of a step. But then today, I get on Twitter and I see Senator James Lankford, who is a great ally, a pro-life hero, courageous pro-life hero, U.S. Senator in the state of Oklahoma. He tweets out, this is his tweet. This is what I saw this morning. The Biden administration was withholding federal health care funding, so Medicaid funding, because Medicaid funding comes from federal government and from the state. It's like they match each other, okay? So the Biden administration has said they're going to withhold federal Medicaid funding. That is money for healthcare, people who can't afford healthcare, so poor people, in Oklahoma, because Oklahoma refuses to violate the state law that prevents all abortions. Now, when you go back to this study right here, when you broke it down by state, and this group, the Commonwealth Fund, said that 51% of pregnant women in Oklahoma, because it's very rural, very poor, 51% of pregnant women in Oklahoma use Medicaid funding to pay for their health care during pregnancy. So if you want to talk about who is increasing mortality rates in pregnant women, maternal mortality, it's the Biden administration, who literally just said they're withholding federal dollars from states for healthcare for pregnant women because they're mad that the women can't have access to abortion and kill their babies. Things I wish I would have known about yesterday during the NBC interview, because this needs to be spread far and wide. The Biden administration, I came to you a couple weeks ago with a story where the administration is now saying, the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, which I've been to in Huntsville, Alabama, because I'm a space camp graduate, a nerd, thank you. The U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville isn't going to be expanded for the Space Force, because they were going to build this huge Space Force expansion there, because Senator Tuberville, the Alabama senator, is holding up DoD promotions because the Department of Defense is illegally using taxpayer dollars to pay for DoD employees to have abortions. So he said, as long as you're going to do that, we're not going to do any promotions in the military until the DoD stops doing this insane thing that violates the law, right? So the Biden administration said, it's fine. We're not going to put our new Rocket Space Force Center in Huntsville, where the Rocket Center is, which makes sense. We're going to do somewhere else in a friendly Democrat state, probably Colorado or California. So that was fine, whatever, tit for tat. They're arguing about funding for a rocket center, and jobs will be impacted. Probably the jobs are probably most needed in Huntsville more than Denver, but okay. But this, so to seek retribution against Republican states, the Biden administration is not going to give healthcare funding for poor women. This goes beyond like tit for tat politics. This is just evil. This is just wrong. It's absolutely wrong. This is the calmest I've been about this all day, because I've been in a huff all day about this story, about how unjust this story and what the Biden administration is doing. It's just unbelievable. All right, now for happy story. So Students for Life, we've had a huge year. We knew it was going to be a big year after reversal of Roe. We prepped our student leaders, warned everyone about increase in violence, increase in First Amendment assaults, what to do, who to call, how to protect themselves. And we weren't wrong. We saw more than 100 incidents of free speech violations were reported to our team. Our general counsel, we ended up spending 3 times the amount of money that my team and I actually budgeted for legal work this year. And we still use the pro bono law firms too. This is just for internal intake and trying to get things going. It's unbelievable. Nearly 10% of all Students for Life groups in the country requested assistance this year with harassment. But there's also been really good news. The good news is the pro-life movement persisted, has gone on, has grown. We are now over 1,400 chapters in all 50 states. We have more than 17,000 young people who are signed up, active in Students for Life groups. And when we took the Department of Labor's cost for a volunteer hour, it's like $32 per volunteer hour. That's like if you were paid, that's what you would be worth as a volunteer. We took that, did some conservative estimates. We believe the students' volunteer hours are over $24 million this year that they contributed to pregnancy centers, maternity homes, to the pro-life movement in their communities. That is epic. And that's something, to be honest with you guys, you never would see the Planned Parenthood generation groups and pro-choice groups on campus committed in that big of a way uh, to serving on in their communities. It's awesome. We had a major goal this year to reach 1 million conversations Gen Z. I still don't know the totals. I'm not going to know that until the end of July, but we do know on campuses, just with students, we saw more than 55,000 in-person conversations, which was our highest record ever. We had tons of new policies enacted in campuses to support pregnant parenting women. So we saw 10 big policy changes, things like Charleston Southern University students. Well, this is huge. Well, students will no longer be dismissed for becoming pregnant outside of marriage, thanks to Students for Life. University of Louisville created a parent and pregnant scholarship through their school. Students in Benedictine College instituted pregnant parenting parking spaces on campus. University of New Hampshire, which, by the way, there is a really funny video of me and Isabel Brown on my spring tour at University of New Hampshire. We just posted on Instagram tonight on Students for Life and my Instagram, so make sure you check it out. But at University of New Hampshire, Northwest Missouri State University, Whitworth University, all create lactation rooms for nursing moms. I actually, at University of New Hampshire, before the hundreds of protesters descended upon me, I did find the lactation room. I was super excited. So they persisted. The pro-life generation was not cowered into silence this year, was not bullied into silence amidst all the opposition they faced. So super, super excited to see that. All right, last story. This is a big story that it's a pretty big deal. I just saw it. My friend Lila just tweeted about it or something, and I was like, I missed this yesterday. So women who started the pill, the birth control pill, so artificial hormone suppressant, essentially changes the way your body works. Women who started the birth control pill as teens had 130% higher rate of depression, according to a study. And this study, by the way, wasn't just like this little study. This was done in Sweden. 264,000 women were surveyed, 250,000 women. 130% higher rate of depression, teens that went on birth control versus teens that didn't go on birth control. And the rate among adult users was 92% versus women who went on birth control versus women who didn't go on birth control. This is huge because I think what's important about this is any girl who's ever been on birth control knows something ain't right about it, but they don't tell us that. They never have these like actual real conversations with us. They just are like, well, you have to do this. It's better than getting pregnant. But they don't actually have a real conversation with us about how it's harming our bodies. Here's my prediction, friends. My prediction is, in this generation, artificial hormonal contraception will become a thing of the past because this generation, regardless of how they view abortion, right or wrong, this generation is wising up to the fact that putting artificial hormones into your body when we're trying to drink organic milk and, if we eat meat, only eat organic, we're, non-GMO, this generation understands that, like, that's not good. And the way our body was created is a good thing. And we shouldn't be trying to suppress what our body was supposed to do. Like, birth control tricks your brain, your body, into thinking that you're pregnant every single month. And we know, if you all read that book I mentioned to you from the neurologist at Baylor, that Your Brain on Birth Control, who's, by the way, it's not a Christian or conservative book at all. She's a very progressive feminist. It literally changes our taste in music, our taste in men, our taste in food. Like, it alters our brains. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation because it's time we have this conversation as women across the country. And I think it'll help wake up a lot of people who may not support or, believe what we're saying about abortion, when they will come along and say, wait a minute, I know what you're saying about birth control is right because I've experienced myself. And maybe if we're right on this issue, maybe we're right on the issue of abortion too. So there's my pro-life gen news for tonight. I hope the live stream was good enough for you all to see. I recorded this as well, so we'll get some news clips out. And I will see you all tomorrow night from, I think, somewhere in Indiana.